If you live alone, you know that feeling. The one where you're lying in bed, lights off, and something in the back of your mind tells you to check the window. Just once, just to be sure. The 3 stories you're about to hear were sent to me by people who swear every word of it happened exactly the way they described it. Names have been changed. The fear has not. Get comfortable. Lock your doors. And let's begin. I moved into my first apartment when I was 23. It was small, it was cheap, and it was mine. And after 4 years of splitting rent with roommates, that felt like everything. The building was an old, converted house, split into 3 units. I had the ground floor, which meant I had my own little patch of backyard, and a big bay window in my bedroom that looked out over it. I loved that window. During the day, sunlight would pour in and hit the wall just right. At night, I'd leave the blinds open because I liked seeing the stars before I fell asleep. About 3 weeks after I moved in, I woke up around 2 a.m. for no reason at all. No noise, no dream I could remember. I just opened my eyes. And when I did, I was facing the window. There was someone standing in my backyard. Not near the fence, not passing through. Standing, still upright, maybe 15 feet from the glass, facing directly toward my bed. I didn't move. I don't think I even breathed. I told myself it was a trick of the shadows, a bush, a trick my sleep-heavy brain was playing on me. But the longer I stared, the more the shape held. It had shoulders. It had a head. And I swear, for just a second, it tilted, like it noticed me noticing it. I grabbed my phone off the nightstand so fast, I knocked over a glass of water. And when the crash of glass hitting the floor echoed through the room, I looked back up. The yard was empty. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat up with every light in the apartment on, phone in hand, waiting for the sun. In the morning, I walked the entire perimeter of the yard. No footprints, no broken fence panels, nothing. I told myself it was a dream that felt too real, the kind you have when you move somewhere new and your brain hasn't caught up yet. For a while, I actually believed that. Then, 11 days later, it happened again. Same time, almost exactly 2 a.m., like something set a clock in my chest. I woke up facing the window, and the figure was back. Same spot, same stillness. This time, I didn't reach for my phone right away. I made myself watch. I needed to know if I was imagining it. And that's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop straight through the floor. It wasn't just standing there. It was breathing. I could see the shoulders rise, fall, rise again. I called 911 with my hands shaking so badly I had to redial twice. By the time an officer arrived, 20 minutes later, the yard was empty just like before. He walked the property with a flashlight, found nothing, and gently suggested I get motion sensor lights. Standard advice, the kind you get when the person listening doesn't actually believe you. I installed 3 motion lights the very next day. I also started sleeping with my back to the window, which I hated, because now I couldn't see it. I could only wonder what was behind me. 2 weeks passed with nothing. I started to relax. I actually laughed about it with a coworker, called it my apartment ghost. Then one night, the motion lights came on. I heard them click through the blinds, that particular electric hum before the flood of white light. My heart nearly stopped. I turned over slowly and looked. Nothing was there, no person, no animal, nothing to trigger it, but taped to the outside of the glass, at eye level, exactly where my face would be lying in bed, was a photograph of me, sleeping. I didn't touch that photo. I didn't sleep in that room again. I grabbed a blanket and locked myself in the bathroom, and I called the police for the second time. And this time, they took it seriously. When they arrived and saw the photograph still taped to the glass, one officer went quiet in a way that scared me more than the picture itself. He asked if he could take it into evidence, and then he asked me something I didn't expect, whether I recognized the angle the photo was taken from. I looked again. It wasn't taken from the backyard. It was taken from inside my bedroom. The investigation that followed took almost a month. It turned out that the previous tenant, a maintenance man who'd done odd jobs for the building's owner, had kept a spare key after he was let go. He'd been coming and going through the crawl space under the house for weeks, watching me sleep, and only stepping into the yard when he wanted me to notice him. The photograph wasn't a threat. It was, in his words to police, an introduction. He was arrested 2 towns over, in a motel room with a folder of photos of me going back to my very first week in that apartment. I moved out within 72 hours. To this day, I check every window before I close my eyes, every single night. This story was sent to me by a woman named Danielle, who asked me to change every name in it, including her own. I've done that. Everything else, she says, happened exactly as written. Danielle lived in a quiet cul-de-sac with her husband and their 2 kids. It was the kind of neighborhood where everyone waved at everyone. Friendly, a little nosy, the kind of place you feel safe letting your kids ride bikes until dark. One evening in October, she was washing dishes at her kitchen sink, which faced the side yard, and, beyond it, her neighbor's property. She glanced up out of habit, the way you do when you're standing at a window, and she saw a man standing at the edge of his own yard, facing her house. He waved. She waved back, assumed it was her neighbor, and went back to the dishes. It wasn't until she looked up a second time, maybe 30 seconds later, that something felt wrong. He hadn't moved. He was still facing her house, still not moving a single muscle, except that raised hand, still mid-wave, like a photograph. She stepped back from the sink. When she looked again, he was gone. She mentioned it to her husband that night, and he laughed it off. Said their neighbor, an older man named Frank, was known for being a little odd but completely harmless. Danielle wanted to believe that. For almost 2 weeks, she did. Then she saw him again, this time at night, standing in almost the exact same spot, lit only by the moon, facing her bedroom window instead of the kitchen. He didn't wave this time. He just stood there, and when she pulled the blinds shut, her hands were trembling so badly, it took her 3 tries to get the string right. The next morning, she brought it up to her actual neighbor, the real Frank, over the fence, and what he told her made her blood run cold. Frank hadn't been home in 3 weeks. He'd been visiting his daughter 2 states away, recovering from a hip surgery. His house had been completely empty. Danielle immediately thought of the harmless old man her husband dismissed the sighting as, and she felt sick, because if it wasn't Frank standing in that yard, then who had been waving at her for 2 weeks? She started documenting everything, dates, times, a small notebook she kept in her nightstand drawer. The figure appeared 6 more times over the following month, always near dusk or late at night, always in that same patch of yard, always facing whichever window she happened to be standing at. It was as if he knew exactly where in the house she was without ever seeing her move there first. Her husband finally believed her. The night security footage from their new doorbell camera caught the figure clearly for the first time. A man in his 50s, gaunt, wearing the same gray jacket every single time, standing motionless for 11 full minutes before walking calmly off camera. Not toward the street, toward the back fence, which connected to the empty foreclosed house 3 properties down. Police searched that foreclosed house 2 days later, after Danielle and her husband finally reported the footage. What they found explained the gray jacket, the stillness, the 11-minute stares. The man had been squatting in the abandoned home for nearly 4 months. Inside, officers found a chair positioned directly at a side window with a clear line of sight to Danielle's kitchen and bedroom windows across the yards. Notebooks, sketches, handwritten notes about her daily schedule, her children's school pickup times, the days her husband worked late. He wasn't a stranger who wandered into the wrong yard. He had chosen that empty house specifically because of what it let him see. And in his notes, officers found one entry dated the same night as that very first wave at the kitchen sink that simply read, "She waved back." Danielle and her family moved out of that neighborhood within the year. She told me she still can't wave at a stranger without her stomach turning. When my brother Mark and I were kids, we had this dumb little game we played growing up in our parents' house. 3 knocks on the window meant, "It's me, let me in," a signal for sneaking each other in after curfew or during summer nights when we wanted to talk without waking anyone up. 2 knocks meant nothing. 3 knocks always meant Mark. We hadn't played that game in almost 15 years. Mark moved across the country after college. We texted on birthdays, called maybe twice a year. Normal adult sibling distance, nothing dramatic, just life pulling us apart the way it does. I live alone now in a small house with a window right beside my bed, low enough to the ground that anyone standing outside could reach up and knock on the glass without even stretching. One night, around 1 a.m., I heard 3 knocks. I sat straight up in bed. My heart was already racing before my mind even caught up to why. 3 knocks. That specific rhythm, knock, 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 evenly spaced, deliberate. I told myself it was a branch, the wind, anything logical, but there was no wind that night. I remember that clearly because I'd left a candle burning on my dresser earlier, and the flame hadn't moved once. I didn't open the blinds that first night. I just lay frozen, staring at the ceiling, telling myself it wouldn't happen again. It happened again 4 nights later. Same 3 knocks, same hour, give or take a few minutes. This time I forced myself to look, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears, and when I pulled back the blinds, the yard was completely empty. No one on the lawn, no car in the street, nothing. I called Mark the next morning, half joking, half desperate for an explanation, and asked him if he remembered our old signal. He laughed and said of course he did, then asked why I was bringing it up out of nowhere. I told him about the knocks. There was a long pause on the line, longer than I liked, before he said, "That's weird. I've actually been thinking about you a lot this week." I brushed it off as coincidence, or I had to. The alternative didn't make sense. The knocks came a 3rd time, 6 days after that, and this time I didn't hesitate. I threw open the blinds instantly, and for just a fraction of a second, I swear I saw a shape backing away from the glass into the darkness of my own backyard, moving fast, low to the ground, gone before I could even process a shape or a height or anything at all beyond the fact that something had just been inches from my face. I didn't sleep that house that night. I stayed at a friend's, and I called Mark again the next day, my voice shaking, asking him, begging him honestly, to just tell me he was pranking me, driving cross-country to mess with his little sibling. He said no. He said he hadn't left his apartment in weeks. Then he told me something that made the knocking suddenly feel like the least frightening part of this entire story. Mark told me he'd been having the same dream almost every night for 2 weeks, standing outside a window that looked exactly like mine, knocking 3 times, trying to get someone's attention. Except in the dream, no matter how hard he knocked, no one on the other side of the glass ever woke up. He hadn't told me because it sounded insane. I hadn't told him about the knocks for the exact same reason. 2 days after that phone call, Mark's roommate called me in a panic. Mark had collapsed at work, a seizure, something no one in our family had any history of, completely unexplained by doctors at first. He was stable, thankfully, but he'd been in the hospital unconscious during the exact hour I heard those very first 3 knocks. The doctors eventually found the cause, a treatable condition caught early enough because of that hospital visit. He's fine now. He tells people the whole story like it's a funny family legend, our own personal ghost story, but I still don't have a good explanation for what I saw pulling away from that glass. And to this day, if I hear 3 knocks on any window, anywhere, I answer it immediately, every single time. Whether it's a stranger in the dark, someone watching from an empty house, or something we can't fully explain. The truth is, the people in these stories never fully felt safe again. Not completely. Not the same way. If you have a story of your own, something that happened to you, something you still can't explain, send it my way. It might end up right here in a video just like this one. Until next time. Check your locks, check your windows, and stay safe out there.